There's definitely more than meets the eye with our next interviewee. My name is Clady Quesada, and this is the Brownsville Podcast for Studio X. And we're here at the RGV Startup Week, day one with Steve Perez.
Thank you.
How are you, Steve?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Doing great. And in just 30 seconds that we've been here, I've learned a little bit more about you and about Brownsville itself. But we're going to start with your visit here today at the RGV Startup. Tell us a little bit about why your interest so much in building entrepreneurship.
Alrighty. Well, I believe it's the foundation of what's going to be coming in the future with AI basically shifting all the industries. A lot of people are going to be obviously shifting to entrepreneurship. So the building blocks of entrepreneurship is not easy to learn. I'm always saying that it's kind of like managing six horses, right? It's not easy, especially coming in from a 9 to 5 job where do this, do that, do this, do that. It's not going to be easy to transition. So we believe eBridge is helping that transition. We enjoy being here as much as we can. Obviously, we're not here 40 hours, but we're here as best as possible, especially like this week, right? Helping other entrepreneurs, help other entrepreneurs so the community can go up.
Well, you said something very simple, but a lot of us might not know. What is the purpose of eBridge?
Well, in summary, it is helping people, individuals, learn how to run businesses. Buy and sell.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to one of our citizens that I can tell a story about him later on, but sometimes it's just very simple: buy and sell. Buy for $1, sell for $9. It could be a service, it could be a product, but it's also more than that, right? Because you gotta be on top of accounting and legal and other things that pop up, or U.S. government regulations that sometimes stresses us, like tariffs. Why do I mention tariffs? Because I deal with import and export. I'm always gonna be worried about tariffs. But at the end of the day, as consumers, we pay the tariffs. Right now, the tariffs are being refunded. Guess who got rich by that? The big boys. They took it away from us and they took it to them because it got refunded. So we got to fight as entrepreneurship, another way to deploy businesses across many, many small companies instead of one big, big, big company.
And how, tell us a little bit more about that. How do you think that that's possible?
Well, now that we have the equal equalizer, which is the AI, now you're powered up. Because usually, let's go 5 years ago, including myself, like how do I grow? How do I scale? I need marketing. I need to hire somebody. I don't have 3K, whatever. So I'm always constantly, constrained. With AI, you can have 300 employees
Right.
for $30.
Can you
It
clarify this
changes.
for me? When you have AI and you can do that, there's a confusion here. How do we make AI work for us? One, and two, how much is the membership for, let's say you want to build a staff of 300 people or even a staff of five? Uh, wh- do you know the logistics of the membership and how that works?
Yeah. Well, there's many platforms, but I'll stick with one or two examples, right? Let's say you don't like data entry. I don't like data entry. I said that. I don't like data entry. So sometimes when we gotta pay bills, vendors, suppliers, they send it via email, right? What do people do right now? Print or display on a screen and then type it in. So they're losing time. Maybe I need a clerk. If I grow, I need two clerks. So that's one way to look at it. How can you use AI right now to take away some of those repetitive, boring, tasks and bring it down from 2K, 3K to maybe $50.
Mm.
Now it's not a membership. You gotta kind of build a skill set, but there's so many skill sets that you can grab for free, and it's literally a free employee. You just gotta configure the computer, put it on a data center. In fact, here at BCIC, there's a data center. It can fit 50,000 agents in there. That's been what we're pushing, right? Because there's a shift from human resources to digital resources. Not everything, of course, right? I mean, I don't think you want to be talking right now to a robot, right? We're human to human. We love it. We love that communication. But we're talking about the back end stuff, the repetitive stuff, the boring stuff.
Busy
Why
work.
would you want to be cutting grass with your fingers? It makes no sense. We use mowers and sooner or later autonomous, cutting machines. That's basically how we see it. But now imagine being able to use that equipment or those processing power to cut those expenses. And now you can hire 3 people, 6 people, 7 people, and create more wealth, right? And that's what I think eBridge is about. How can the entrepreneurs create wealth and distribute it with the community versus if we get the big boys coming in, they're not going to distribute wealth. They're going to take wealth away from us.
I mean, the whole purpose of RGV Startup is keep the money here,
Yes,
build up the people here, and
correct.
let's give them the resources to
Correct.
do that.
Correct. Because once you build in the community, and you rotate the money, you charge me $1,000, then you hire somebody and they charge you $800, and then it comes back to me $600. You're rotating the money, right? And most of the money stays here. The wealth stays here, the community versus big companies. No, they draw our wealth and they take it to Chicago, New York, and they're the ones doing all the big buildings. There's proof of that here in Brownsville. Just look at downtown. What happened to our downtown in the 70s and 80s? Well, the big stores came in, and we were gutted.
Sears, Bells, J.C. Penney.
Yep, correct. And don't want to see the big retailer names, but you know who I'm talking about. They took off all the mom and pop shops that made beautiful. But if you look at what New York City has done, they actually blocked those big boys, and they're full of small companies. Isn't that interesting that we can learn from New York City?
That is very. You're the second person who mentions New York City, while we've been speaking to the panelist.
Yeah, and there's a connection with New York City. Brownsville had a deep connection with New York City. Uh, our one of our citizens, Brownsville, Texas citizen, called James Jewett Stillman, was born here in that little house, 1850. He grew up. He took over the business, and he founded the National City Bank, which today we know as Citibank. So there's a direct connection between Brownsville, Texas, and New York City. Not everything was, grown from here, but I'm just talking about that link, the banking link.
That's very interesting, and it's not something that's taught here.
Nope. I learned about it a few years ago, and I was stunned at how I was discovering these stories, and it blew my mind away to know that his 2 daughters married the 2 sons of Rockefeller,
We
a
were also
Brownsville native.
in a time period where the country was being built.
Yeah, because his father came from Connecticut, and he came to Matamoros. This is not Texas. Texas is Corpus Christi and above. This is Tamaulipas, Matamoros. Okay, so he comes to Tamaulipas, Mexico. I'm not too sure what he was selling, but he started on a shack because I have the book, and he started selling stuff from a shack. That sounds like farmer's market to me, or the flea market. So what was he selling? Something, but he started just doing business, buy and sell, buy for $1, sell for $9, services, oxes, whatever, right? But he started building partnerships, the community grew, and that's the point, the community grew, right? And by the time we got to the 1860s, during the Civil War, again it boomed, and again it boomed, because he went from Mexico to Texas, the Republic of Texas, then the southern states, and the United States. And through all those periods that he went through a lot of transformation, he was a banker. Why was he the banker? Because he was helping the community. As the community helps each other, and I always have this phrase, support the network, and the network supports you.
Well, I've also heard that if I think the Rockefellers have a quote out there, something to the effect of, "We're not the millionaires, or we're not the millionaires or billionaires. We put ourselves where the millions have to run through."
That is correct. And that is correct. That is just a brokerage. And I am a broker. I'm a freight broker. I don't drive trucks. I don't drive reefers. I don't drive flatbeds. I don't fly planes. I do not command vessels. I'm just a broker. I'm just in the middle of it. Another name for it is arbitrage. You just, push this to the left and get 100 here, and then push to the right and get 100. You make yourself $200 for that transaction. Boom, make 2,000 transactions like that, and put it in automation, and you're selling trucks like stocks.
So today, or during the week at RGV Startup Week, what is the main thing you want people to leave with? If they learn anything from RGV Startup Week, what is it?
Just dive in, do it. Because some people don't move. They're reading, learning, reading. No, it's about execution. You got to do. Will it hurt in the beginning? Yeah. Didn't we all go through how to learn skateboarding or bicycling? We hurt, we fall down. But what do you do after you fall down? You get up. You don't
Get
just
back
stay
up.
there. So you got to get up, try again. That's iteration. That's another word of looking at it. And it's all across the board. But sooner or later, entrepreneurs figure out a way how to have success because they didn't quit. They didn't stop. That to me is the best advice I can give to our young ones and our even our entrepreneurs right now. I mean, I'm also worried about my generation. When I was in the 80s, nobody was into computers. So that anybody is above my age doesn't really know computers.
Hmm.
And if they're using an iPad, that's a pad. That's not a computer. So there's that gap that if they're removed from a job, they're going to be saying, "What do I do? What do I do?" And then, but if they come in, they'll learn some blocks of, how to run a business.
What has been one of your biggest challenges, professionally and personally?
Biggest challenges? Well, businesses go up and down. Okay, I've always said to people, I've crashed 3 times. Right? You're flying nice and dandy, making some good money, and then all of a sudden something happened, you crash. The Great Recession was not a good one. Right? I'm hoping it doesn't come back again, but it feels like it's coming.
Mm.
This AI scenario is too powerful. It's like 10,000 employees against one. It's just too powerful. So we have to counterattack it with another AI group to counterattack that AI group. That at least that's what I'm thinking right now. But it's just a matter of just keep executing, right? Keep doing it until you figure out how to make a profit, and just continue with that until you make it happen. A good story that I always use is Colonel Sanders, his story,
Mm-hmm.
which is, he was 65 when he finally broke through, right? And he just didn't stop.
Yeah.
He created his Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe, and he meddled with the kettle thingy. He was playing around with it until he got the recipe right, because it took like 45 minutes to eat fried chicken. So you sit down, and 45 minutes later, and some people will leave, right?
Mm.
He wanted to do it within 10 minutes. That's why he kept at it. He finally did it. But then when he started selling it, things happened. His restaurant burned down, or if he rebuilt, it was Route 66 got changed. I mean, he had a lot of issues. So entrepreneurs always have issues. But like I said earlier, when you fall, what do?
Get back
Right?
up.
Get back up and do it again, because obviously, you know, job creation is limited. And if anything, you're not going to get a raise, right? If you get what, 3%,
Hmm.
inflation is 8 or more. I know it's hidden, right? Because some people put credit cards, you pay in credit cards, then you pay other, taxes, and it bites you, right? But entrepreneurship is the only one that you can buy for $1 and sometimes sell for $9. That's 900%. Why put your money in the stock market? Put it in yourself.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, time after time, we've spoken to panelists who keep saying the same thing in many different ways. I think that success, from what I've learned from Steve Perez and other panelists, is how quickly can you execute?
How quickly can you execute? Yep.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Steve.
Thank you for having us.
If anybody wants to learn more, maybe there's some information that you can share with them. Where can they find you?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually in LinkedIn. They can find me at Fastport. You know, why Fastport? Because I'm helping in forwarders and other companies to be quicker. To cross import and export. That's always been my push since 30 years ago.
Thank you so much, Steve. And so sometimes you might even see him around eBridge.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not here 40 hours, but we love to come to 1 Million Cups every Wednesday, and we enjoy that. And then, if I can plug in, we actually have an AI tech club after the 1 Million Cups, where we just discuss
Mm.
things, how to do this, how to do that, and play some videos, and just let the community know that we got to figure it out. We have a data center. We have in Brownsville, Texas, an investment on the fiber optic network, which was
That's
around
right.
$100 million.
Yeah.
And here we are at eBridge, where we can get downloads of 1 gigabyte and 2 gigabytes, maybe even get 5 gigabytes download, 5 gigabytes upload. We don't need more speed than that.
Right.
So how do we use the processing power and the core units that we have here, and make it work for the community. That's what we're pushing.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you.